Mining is reshaping Earth faster than nature can recover. Deep beneath the surface, hidden treasures fuel modern civilization. Every smartphone, car, and building begins with extracted minerals. Yet this convenience carries a cost rarely seen or discussed. Forests disappear silently as machines carve through ancient landscapes. Mountains, once stable, are reduced to hollowed, unstable shells. Rivers that once ran clear now carry toxic sediments downstream. Entire ecosystems collapse when soil layers are stripped away. Wildlife loses habitats faster than it can adapt or relocate. Communities near mines often face polluted air and water. Dust clouds rise continuously from excavation sites across regions. Heavy machinery roars day and night without pause or rest. The demand for resources grows with every passing technological advancement. Few stop to ask where these raw materials truly come from. Even fewer understand the environmental damage left behind. Mining is not new, but its scale has dramatically increased. Open pit mines now span kilometers, visible even from space. These scars on Earth may take centuries to heal naturally. Toxic chemicals used in extraction seep into groundwater supplies. Acid mine drainage turns freshwater streams into lifeless channels. Soil fertility declines sharply after repeated excavation activities. Farmers near mining zones struggle to grow healthy crops. Health issues rise in populations exposed to mining pollution. Respiratory diseases become more common in nearby communities. Despite this, global demand for minerals continues to rise. Technology industries rely heavily on rare earth elements. These elements are often mined under environmentally destructive conditions. The balance between progress and preservation is increasingly fragile. Governments face pressure to support both economy and environment. Mining companies argue they provide essential materials for growth. Environmentalists warn that current practices are unsustainable long-term. The truth lies somewhere in a complex middle ground. Responsible mining practices exist, but are not widely enforced. Illegal mining activities worsen environmental degradation in many regions. Satellite images reveal expanding mine zones year after year. Once green landscapes are replaced by gray, barren earth. Rehabilitation efforts often begin too late to restore ecosystems. Some areas never fully recover their original biodiversity. Water tables drop significantly after extensive underground mining. This leads to drought-like conditions in surrounding regions. The environmental footprint of mining extends far beyond extraction sites. Transportation of minerals adds further pollution and emissions. Processing raw materials requires large amounts of energy. This energy often comes from fossil fuel sources, thus mining indirectly contributes to climate change acceleration. The cycle of extraction and consumption continues relentlessly. Public awareness of these impacts remains relatively low. Education about sustainable mining is still limited globally. Innovations in green mining technology are slowly emerging. These innovations aim to reduce environmental harm significantly. However, implementation remains expensive and inconsistent worldwide. Many developing regions prioritize economic gain over environmental safety. This creates long-term ecological vulnerabilities in those areas. Mining waste management is one of the biggest challenges. Tailings ponds pose serious risks of toxic leakage. Catastrophic dam failures have caused environmental disasters in history. Each disaster highlights the risks of poor regulation. The environment pays the price for human consumption habits. Nature provides resources, but not at infinite renewal speed. Sustainable balance is necessary for future generations to survive. Without change, environmental damage will continue to accelerate. The urgency to reform mining practices has never been greater. Scientists continue studying long-term effects of extraction activities. Their findings often warn of irreversible ecological consequences. This raises a critical question about the future of mining. The environmental crisis caused by mining is often underestimated globally. Beneath economic benefits lies a complex web of ecological destruction. Each extracted mineral leaves behind a trace of environmental disturbance. These disturbances accumulate slowly but become severe over time. Soil erosion is one of the earliest visible impacts of mining. Once protective vegetation is removed, land becomes highly vulnerable. Rainfall then washes away nutrient-rich topsoil rapidly. This makes land nearly impossible to restore for agriculture. Dust particles from mining sites travel long distances in air. These particles contribute to air pollution and reduced visibility. Fine particulate matter also affects human lung health significantly. Children and elderly populations are most at risk nearby. Noise pollution from mining operations disrupts natural wildlife behavior. Animals abandon habitats due to constant mechanical disturbances. Migration patterns of species are permanently altered in some regions. Underground mining causes land subsidence in surrounding areas. This leads to cracks, sinkholes, and structural damage above ground. Entire villages have been displaced due to ground instability. Water contamination remains one of the most dangerous effects. Heavy metals like mercury and lead enter water systems. These toxins accumulate in fish and enter food chains. Human consumption of contaminated water leads to serious illnesses. Mining also reduces biodiversity in affected ecosystems drastically. Rare plant species disappear before they can even be studied. Scientists estimate thousands of species are lost annually due to habitat destruction. Some ecosystems collapse entirely after mining begins in sensitive zones. Wetlands are especially vulnerable to mining-related disruptions. Once destroyed, wetland ecosystems are extremely difficult to rebuild. Forest mining leads to deforestation on a massive scale. Trees that took decades to grow are cleared in hours. This contributes significantly to rising atmospheric carbon levels. Carbon release from disturbed soil further accelerates global warming. Mining operations often rely on large-scale water consumption. This reduces availability of clean water for nearby communities. Competition over water resources sometimes leads to conflict. Indigenous populations are disproportionately affected by mining expansion. Their ancestral lands are often targeted for resource extraction. Cultural heritage sites are destroyed in the process. Sacred landscapes are turned into industrial wastelands. Legal protections for these communities are often weak or ignored. Economic promises rarely compensate for environmental loss suffered. Short-term profits overshadow long-term ecological consequences. Many mining sites are abandoned without proper restoration. These abandoned sites continue polluting for decades afterward. Acidic runoff continues long after mining activity ends. Restoration projects require huge financial and technical resources. Not all governments or companies invest in rehabilitation efforts. This leaves scars on the environment that persist for generations. Satellite monitoring shows expanding degradation zones worldwide. Climate models increasingly include mining as a contributing factor. Researchers stress the need for circular resource economies. Recycling materials can reduce demand for new extraction. However, recycling systems are still inefficient in many countries. Public pressure is slowly pushing industries toward greener practices. Environmental laws are becoming stricter in some regions. Enforcement of these laws, however, remains inconsistent. Corruption in resource-rich areas worsens environmental neglect. Illegal mining operations often bypass environmental safeguards entirely. This creates uncontrolled destruction in sensitive ecosystems. Awareness campaigns are beginning to highlight these hidden impacts. Education can play a key role in changing consumption habits. Consumers rarely realize their demand drives mining expansion. Ethical sourcing is becoming a growing global concern. Companies are now being held accountable by informed consumers. The pressure for sustainable mining solutions continues to grow worldwide. Sustainable mining is no longer optional. It is urgently necessary today. The planet's resources are finite, yet demand keeps increasing rapidly. Innovation in mining technology offers hope for reduced environmental harm. New methods aim to extract minerals with minimal ecological disruption. Precision mining techniques can limit unnecessary land destruction significantly. Automation is helping reduce human exposure to hazardous mining zones. Advanced sensors now detect mineral deposits with greater accuracy. This reduces wasteful excavation and unnecessary environmental damage. Renewable energy is slowly being introduced into mining operations. Solar-powered mining sites are emerging in some experimental projects. These efforts help lower carbon emissions from extraction processes. Water recycling systems are improving resource efficiency in mines. Closed-loop systems reduce contamination of surrounding ecosystems. Despite progress, adoption of green mining remains slow globally. Cost remains a major barrier for many developing regions. Large mining corporations still dominate most global extraction activities. Their influence shapes environmental policies in many countries. Transparency in mining operations is still limited in several regions. Independent environmental audits are not always strictly enforced. This lack of accountability leads to repeated ecological damage. Community involvement in mining decisions is often minimal. Local voices are frequently ignored in major extraction projects. This creates tension between corporations and affected populations. Social unrest sometimes arises near heavily mined areas. Environmental justice movements are gaining momentum worldwide. Activists demand fair treatment of both people and nature. They push for stricter regulations and corporate responsibility. International organizations are beginning to address mining impacts. Global agreements on sustainable resource use are being discussed. However, enforcement across borders remains a major challenge. Some countries depend heavily on mining for economic survival. This dependence makes environmental reform more difficult to implement. Balancing economic growth with ecological protection is extremely complex. Researchers emphasize the importance of alternative materials. Substituting rare minerals can reduce pressure on mining industries. Technological innovation in material science is rapidly advancing. Engineers are designing devices that require fewer rare earth elements. This shift could significantly reduce future mining demands. Urban mining is another emerging solution gaining attention. It involves extracting metals from electronic waste instead of earth. E-waste recycling can reduce the need for new mining operations. However, global e-waste management systems are still underdeveloped. Informal recycling practices can also cause environmental harm. Safe and efficient recycling infrastructure is urgently needed. Education about responsible disposal is improving gradually. Governments are starting to implement stricter recycling policies. Some industries are adopting circular economy principles. These principles aim to reuse materials instead of discarding them. Circular systems could transform how resources are consumed globally. Mining companies are slowly investing in sustainability research. Green certifications are becoming more common in the industry. These certifications encourage environmentally responsible practices. Public awareness campaigns highlight the importance of sustainable consumption. Consumers are increasingly asking for ethically sourced products. Market demand is influencing corporate environmental strategies. Technology is also improving land rehabilitation techniques. Scientists are experimenting with restoring mined ecosystems. Reforestation projects are being introduced in degraded mining areas. Some success stories show partial ecosystem recovery is possible. However, full restoration remains extremely difficult to achieve. Long-term monitoring is essential for rehabilitated mining sites. Without monitoring, environmental damage can resurface unexpectedly. Collaboration between governments and industries is crucial. Shared responsibility can lead to more sustainable outcomes. The future of mining depends on how quickly these changes are adopted. The hidden cost of mining often unfolds long after operations begin. Environmental damage continues even when mines are officially closed. Abandoned mining sites become silent sources of ongoing pollution. Toxic water slowly seeps into surrounding soil and rivers. These pollutants can persist for decades without natural breakdown. Entire landscapes remain unusable long after extraction ends. Communities near old mines still suffer from contaminated resources. Economic gains fade, but environmental consequences remain permanent. Rehabilitation efforts are often delayed due to financial limitations. Some companies leave restoration responsibilities incomplete or ignored. This creates long-term burdens for local governments to manage. Ecosystem recovery requires careful planning and sustained investment. Without it, damaged land remains barren and lifeless. Climate change is further intensified by mining-related emissions. Carbon released during extraction adds to atmospheric warming. Methane emissions from coal mining are particularly concerning globally. These gases trap heat and accelerate global temperature rise. Melting glaciers and rising sea levels are indirectly linked. Mining, therefore, contributes to both local and global crises. Environmental degradation is not isolated, but interconnected worldwide. Industrial demand continues to fuel extraction at unsustainable levels. The global economy relies heavily on mined raw materials. This dependency makes rapid transition extremely challenging. Yet ignoring the problem will worsen environmental collapse. Scientists warn that ecosystem tipping points are approaching. Once crossed, recovery becomes nearly impossible for nature. Biodiversity loss due to mining is accelerating in many regions. Fragile ecosystems disappear before they can be fully studied. This loss also affects future medical and scientific discoveries. Many modern medicines originate from natural biodiversity sources. Mining threatens these untapped biological resources permanently. Air quality near mining regions often falls below safe standards. Fine dust particles penetrate deep into human respiratory systems. Long-term exposure increases risk of chronic health conditions. Children growing near mines face developmental health challenges. Hospitals in mining regions report higher disease rates. Environmental stress also affects mental well-being of residents. Constant pollution creates anxiety and reduced quality of life. Water scarcity is worsened by mining's high consumption demands. Competing needs often lead to regional water conflicts. Agricultural productivity declines as irrigation sources become contaminated. Farmers are forced to abandon once fertile lands. Food security becomes threatened in affected areas. Mining expansion also disrupts natural water cycles. Underground aquifers are drained faster than they can replenish. This leads to long-term hydrological imbalance in ecosystems. Government policies often struggle to regulate powerful mining interests. Weak enforcement allows environmental violations to continue. Corruption can further undermine ecological protection efforts. International oversight is limited and often inconsistent. Environmental NGOs play a critical watchdog role globally. They document violations and raise public awareness. Media coverage helps expose hidden environmental damages. Public pressure has led to some policy improvements. However, progress remains slow compared to the scale of damage. Technological advancement alone cannot solve the crisis. Strong governance and ethical responsibility are equally important. Mining reform requires cooperation across multiple sectors. Industry, government, and society must work together effectively. Education about environmental impacts is still insufficient worldwide. Many consumers remain unaware of extraction consequences. Changing consumption behavior is essential for long-term solutions. Sustainable alternatives must be prioritized in development planning. The transition to greener systems requires global commitment. The urgency of reform is now greater than ever before. The future of mining depends on choices made today globally. Humanity stands at a critical crossroads between progress and preservation. Environmental collapse is not inevitable if action is taken now. Smarter extraction methods can dramatically reduce ecological harm. Governments must enforce strict environmental regulations on mining industries. Companies should be held accountable for full land restoration. Technology must prioritize sustainability over maximum resource extraction. Recycling and reuse should replace unnecessary new mining projects. Innovation in material science can reduce mineral dependency significantly. Consumers can influence change through responsible purchasing decisions. Ethical sourcing must become a global industry standard. Transparency in supply chains is essential for accountability. Environmental monitoring should be continuous and publicly accessible. Communities must have a voice in mining decisions. Indigenous rights must be fully respected and protected. Restoring damaged ecosystems should be a mandatory requirement. Governments should invest heavily in rehabilitation technologies. International cooperation is necessary to solve global mining impacts. Climate goals cannot be achieved without addressing mining emissions. Clean energy transition still depends on mined resources carefully. Therefore, responsible mining is essential, not optional. Environmental education must be strengthened from an early age. Awareness can shift society toward more sustainable behaviors. Scientific research should guide future mining policies. Data-driven decisions can reduce long-term environmental damage. Green mining technologies must be scaled up quickly. Economic growth should not come at nature's destruction. Balanced development is possible with proper planning. Ecosystems must be treated as valuable, not expendable. The planet's health is directly tied to human survival. Ignoring environmental damage will lead to irreversible consequences. Nature has limits, and those limits are being tested. Mining reform is one of the most urgent global challenges. Every action taken today shapes tomorrow's environmental reality. Sustainable policies can still reverse some environmental damage. Restoration projects offer hope for degraded landscapes. Success stories prove recovery is possible with effort. However, prevention remains more effective than repair. Reducing extraction demand is key to long-term balance. Circular economies offer a promising pathway forward. Waste reduction can significantly lower mining pressure. Technology must align with ecological responsibility. Industries must innovate without harming natural systems. Governments must incentivize sustainable industrial practices. Global cooperation can accelerate environmental protection efforts. Mining should evolve into a cleaner, safer industry. Future generations depend on decisions made in this era. The planet cannot sustain unlimited resource extraction. Change requires urgency, commitment, and collective responsibility. Environmental protection must become a global priority. Awareness is the first step toward meaningful transformation. Action is the next step toward real impact. Delay will only deepen environmental crises worldwide. The time for sustainable mining reform is now. Humanity must choose preservation over short-term gain. Earth's ecosystems deserve protection and restoration. Responsible mining can still support global development. Balance between industry and nature is achievable. The future depends on sustainable choices today. Hope lies in innovation, awareness, and responsibility. Environmental change begins with informed human action. Mining must evolve or environmental damage will continue. The world is watching how this challenge is addressed. A sustainable path forward is still within reach. The question remains, will we act before it is too late?